Hey guys, this is the Grim Doctor and welcome to my first build video. So, we're going to start with the Guardian. This is my Char Guardian that I've got here. Unfortunately, he's not completely decked out with all his gear at the moment, but the build, when I had a previous account, it was tried and tested in many ways. So, alright, let's get into it. So this one, the Guardian's one that, I played with messed around with builds, I should say, quite a lot. I'm going to call this one version 1.0, but it's probably really something like, I don't know, 30 point something. But yeah, this is where it's at for you guys. So, okay, so bit of a rundown. For me, the reason I chose the Guardian was for support. They just have incredible support skills in all different ways. And I like that kind of role, I guess, back when played some other MMOs that had the more traditional setup, like tank and healing. I was generally in one of those boats. And this is a pretty cool way to, you're a bit of both, to be honest. You can be extremely tough as a Guardian, which is perfect if you want to be some sort of healer, in my opinion. Because why have awesome heals, awesome condition removal, if you can't stay up to use it for everyone? So that's the I guess the basis, my thinking behind this, and you'll see that a lot of the choices that I make basically reinforce that. So we'll get into it. We'll start off just by having a quick look at the skill tree. Mainly because, some of the choices I've made, it all interlocks, basically. So let's have a quick look now. Alright, so I go 4 into Valor, 6 into Honor, and 4 into Virtues. Honor, basically for the healing, and a bit of Vitality. I get a bit of toughness out of the, Valor tree. The other reason that I wanted to keep these at a reasonable level is because of the foods and what's the other one called? The that one's nourishment, and the other one is, bear with me, I can't remember what it says nourishment as well, but it's the other type that you can equip, the one with the little spanner there. And they basically, you get, in this instance, I'm getting either healing and power based on my vitality or toughness. So it's nice to have that boosted up. And again, it's a survivability thing. So I can make sure to keep everyone going. Okay, so this is the basic build I run. We'll start off with the healing because that's a bit of a bigger thing. So I primarily use shouts. You can see I've got 2 down at the bottom there. I use the shouts for a few reasons. They give buffs and boons to other players, but we'll get into a little bit more when I get to the armor. I use what's called the Trooper rune. Now the Trooper rune, every time you use a shout, it takes conditions off people, so it's a really good synergy between those, basically. It's quite a lot of condition removal, and if anyone's played things even as simple as, say, AC, that first spider, even as it's been changed at the moment, it is Condition City. So the more you can have, the better. On occasions, depends on the group, I'll chuck another shout in there, in that 7 slot. But it just depends. I do change skills a lot depending on what the situation is. So, okay, let's have a look at the next one. So, we're getting Vigor if I deliver a critical hit. I'm not spectre critical hits, so that's not a massive deal. There's some stuff going on now in this area. Of course there is. Bear with me just a second, guys. I'll be back. Okay, sorry about that, guys. I was in that area for like over half an hour. Nothing was happening, and I guess I hit my limit. So we're just hiding in a tree a little ways off. But anyway, let's get back to the traits. Okay, so alright, so I don't focus very much on critical hits, because this is a bit more strictly a support class, and I guess I'd call it a high level support class. I say that because the idea is I can keep up the classes that don't have sort of as much defense or anything like that. And the other thing, most people do tend to go berserker, so they don't necessarily have the survivability. And I got to say, like with this sort of build, when you can keep up a group of berserkers with their health just dropping enormously, even though they've got a bit of DPS, it's really satisfying when you can keep a group like that up, even not even let them get to a down state. So that's quite cool. Particularly once you get to fractals, that's where I guess I emphasize the high level thing as well. Yeah, I've rarely had groups where I haven't been able to keep the majority of people up. I even did a couple of fractals the other day to help out some people where they came in. One was a level 51 Guardian, the other one was 55, I think, Thief, in a fractal, which, a lot of people would kick and not like, but I thought, yeah, we'll give it a go. I want to do a fractal run anyway, and yeah, they died a bit, but not, or went to the downstate a little bit, but not too bad. Yeah, especially considering it was like a low scale fractal, but regardless, yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. Anyway, I will not ramble anymore. So, okay, shouts. Get a bit of vigor. It's good if you get it, but it's not a massive deal. Okay, so healing at the end of your dodge roll. I use this a bit, not a great deal. I find it's sort of a lot of people tend to run around like crazy. So it's not always the most efficient, but it is what we need to keep on pushing down in this tree. And the other thing I find as well, I mean, I do dodge as a guardian, but probably of any class that I've played, probably dodge the least unless I really have to, because yeah, the amount of damage that you can absorb with this build is pretty monstrous. People will be dying around you in some instances, and your health is barely ticked down at all, so it can be pretty impressive. Okay, so the next one, we have the two-handed mastery. Main reason is, okay, so generally if I'm having to go a bit more as a strict healer, I use my staff. The staff is one of the better healing weapons that a guardian's got. Particularly skill 4 here, Empower. You give might and a nice building heal, I guess I'll call it, that ends up with a little burst at the end, which is really nice, as well as a ton of might. So I mean, it's a very nice move. Then we've got the orb of light. That's another handy one. As you go along, you'll get a bit of a handle on lining that up. But if you line that up, particularly if you're using your staff and you're obviously staying back a bit, your meleeers, you can just keep bursting that in between them to keep them up. So because these are heal skills, the more uptime you can have on them, the better. Because you're not only going to be helping to heal them, you're also going to be giving them might in that instance, which you can never get enough of, basically. So a very, very good support weapon. Okay, so the next one, deal more damage when your endurance is not full. That's good. It's not my favorite trait. Like I said, I guess like in those instances, when I do play and I dodge when I really have to, a bit more so. It's nice to, I mean, I'm usually dodging if like everything's going to hell, a lot more so. So I guess, yeah, it's nice to have some sort of bonus for expending that, so that's okay. And the final one, this is one, sorry, that was doing a different run earlier. I use Battle Presence usually. So what that does is nearby allies gain Virtue of Resolve passive effect, which is a passive heal that keeps ticking over. I quite like that. A lot of people think that, looking at it there on the tooltip, it's saying that it's 555 healing. Not very much. Yes, that's not a massive number, but in saying that, it can be the difference. Like when it comes to, I found particularly when I've got a group, and you do get groups that are either heavy with thieves or heavy with mesmers, that 500 passive heal, that can be the difference to keep them up or not. And so as a result, I try to, when it comes to my virtues, I use virtual courage, yeah, a fair bit. I use virtual justice, yeah, I'd say 50% of the time. I try not to use virtual resolve to keep that topping up on everyone. But if people get in trouble, I guess the biggest way that I tend to use virtual courage is if the group's getting in trouble, or a couple of members are, I'll pop this so they get a quick block, and then pop that immediately after, as well as one of my other skills that can reinforce that heal. And like I said, I mean, it's not a massive amount, but it can be a difference. And I mean, it's more support where you're offering something you have to the whole group. You saw before I was on Force of Will. If you're finding the group doesn't need it, I might switch into something like that, because then again it gives you a fair bit of vitality. So you look at my vitality there, 18,500. We change that, we're up to 21,500. That's a pretty good boost. And because of the nourishments that we're using, it's just gonna pump them up that bit more as well. You can use some of the other ones, obviously, but yeah, I find that I generally got battle presence on all the time, especially when you're doing pugs. But guild type runs can be a different story. Okay, so let's have a look. I think the next most important one is probably to go to virtues. We'll come back up there in a sec. Okay, so inspired virtues. So using a virtue gives a boon. That's a nice little boost. So bit of might, bit of regen, bit of protection. Yeah, the more boons the better. We're all about boons. With a guardian, you do have access to every boon in the game as a guardian, which is pretty amazing, really. And they tend to have quite good durations. But okay, let's go on. So recharge on consecration skills. Consecration skills are excellent. Some of them tend to have long cooldowns, but fair enough, because they're very powerful. The most common one that groups will expect you to use is the Wall of Reflection. Cooldown's not too. Once you've got the trait, the cooldown's not too bad, and it boosts your duration there. It's a really handy skill in a lot of situations. Probably most, really. I do switch it up depending on what the fight is. Like if it's a fight where damage is outrageous and you're in a group where you need to stack, something like this can be really good. Or I like to use the Purging Flames. So drop that one down and it pulses to remove conditions, as well as doing damage, so it's quite nice. You'll see as well, I'll go into a little more detail later, these two skills generally stay the same for me. I'll just change the 7 in and out depending on what we need. Occasionally take that one out to swap it for the Stand Your Ground, which gives stability to the whole group. But that's a very nice, it's nice to have that one. It's a stun break, gives you a ton of boons, and strips the conditions off your allies, which is pretty cool. Okay, next one. So gain retaliation when you activate a virtue. Retaliation's great. I used to actually build guardians to basically have their enemies kill themselves just by hitting you, because retaliation can be that powerful. But we're going a bit more support. That kind of build isn't really necessary. So a bit of retaliation is good, just reflects some incoming damage back. And when you've got ones where it spreads to others, I believe it gives that effect as well, which is pretty cool. Okay, and the last one here, this is one skill that I basically never change. Activating Virtual Resolve removes conditions from nearby allies, and the passive effect is even stronger. So even if you weren't using it for support, I think that's a brilliant skill. Just for, there's an extra 3 conditions that can be removed, as well as giving you a heal. It boosts it up, so if you were doing it for just yourself, it's going to be more powerful, which is good because you tend to have a fair bit of health. And if you're passing it on to allies, even better again. It's really nice synergy for me between those two, and that skill alone is quite excellent. I'll just mention in this line here, I do occasionally swap out some skills. If I'm ever going to swap out, I never really touch this line. I tend to, I'll take this skill out to add some extra in there, and the only skill that can be useful in a couple of fractals mainly, where you have no choice, but everyone has to dodge quite a lot. I tend to like to go with the Purity of Body, just so there's, again, passive effect going to everyone as a result of this trait. You're going to passively help everyone's endurance regeneration as well, so an extra nice little boost for everyone. And this skill, it's good because, again, you do have access to all the boons. It's really quite good when it's combined with Save Yourselves, because that's all the boons in the game except for one, which is going to give you quite a nice, quite a decent little damage increase. But yeah, that would be just to get to that final one. If you don't need it, I'd keep the setup something like this. And saying that, let's have a look at Valor. So Valor, first one you get out of there is Aegis when struck below a certain threshold, which is nice. Yeah, when obviously when health drops quickly, you can almost go into a bit of a panic mode. So it's nice to have a quick little block. So it gives you just that split second to get a heal on yourself, keep yourself going. Next one, this is one that I, again, very rarely change. Lose a condition at a set time interval. So I think it works very well with the way I like, the role I like to play. Because it's just an extra way that you can keep some conditions off yourself, which means you're not having to worry so much, and you can keep them, keep focusing on your allies a little bit more. Obviously, whenever you use these shouts to remove conditions, it's going to do it to you as well. But this is nice because you don't have to waste one on yourself, is the way I look at it. You can keep those to keep your allies up a bit more so. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Virtue of Courage is recharged when you rally. It's good because when you come up, I guess, you don't have... You never come up or very rarely come up at near to full health, usually half or below. So it's a way to give you, a quick block and potentially, depending on how it cycles, maybe a bit of stability there, a bit of retaliation. It's nice. It's not the greatest, but again, this is just as part of the core build. This is something I like to move on to. So I choose here Mace of Justice. Now, reason is you don't have as many healing skills on the mace. You've got... I'll switch over. So you've got the third hit heals you. The symbol is probably the biggest heal that you have. The reason I like this, it gives you a little bit more damage, and if you're having to go into melee, it's either because the group's doing okay, or you need to sort of stand tough, get in there, and smash everything down. And that's a good way to survive through it. In fact, you've got a little bit more damage and a bit more healing power. The reason I like this in particular, I used to use the shield skill, the honorable shield that reduces your cooldowns, and that's okay. But honestly, these two skills, they're good, but not amazing. You're better off. You've got the heal here, you've got the heal here. Because you have this mace skill, any healing is improved. And this heal, the one that you do get from the shield, can be very, very good, as well as giving a knockback. So whether you're in a stack or not, or you just want to, make a dash to someone to protect them, because they're starting to get swarmed and almost near death, it's a way you can rush in there, pop a dome, knock everyone back, get this quick heal on them, defend with the other moves that you have, and then pop some sort of condition removal or heal on them. So it can be a nice little, I guess, like courageous dash to save your buddy kind of thing. And then the synergy between, I guess, say for the group, between this skill and this skill is quite good. You get good benefit out of that healing power, as well as when you use a shield. It's not a massive amount of toughness extra you get, but you get some armor, you get some toughness out of it, which is great. And it pushes you a bit further along this tree. Again, synergizing with your nourishments, because you get they're all based on your toughness and vitality. So that's the traits. I guess one of the only other modifications that I'll mention is I often take. This is a build I find it works in almost any environment and situations. But when I do go to do some world v world, most of these I don't really change. Maybe just consecration. They're not always as useful in World v World, so I might swap that out for something like Vengeful, which gives us more retaliation, and I'll usually have a shout in there, because you're wanting to keep up with the Zerg, and well, most times it's a Zerg, and you know, if you can keep an extra bit of stability there, not one, I guess a stability that allows you to stay mobile, because this one is placed on the ground. Something like stand your ground is excellent for those situations. So the only trait change is I would take out the Mace of Justice. I'd take 2 points out, and I would put 2 points into power. So with the first one, once you're struck below a 50% health, you get a bit of retaliation, bit of damage back to them, and it pulses, so it does that for 4 seconds. That's pretty good, but the main thing that I go for here is Protector's Impact. So that basically gives you, when you take falling damage, you take less, and you basically, you take less damage, which means in World v World, obviously there's a lot of things that can happen. There's lots of those big gaps and lots of things you need to use your terrain quite well, so it's another way to stay mobile and sometimes survive. If you don't have that damage reduction, most falls are probably going to kill you, especially if you're in a panic where, you know, for some reason your Zerg has gone a different way because I guess they're not lagging so bad and they can see the opposition Zerg coming or something like that. And then you turn around and there's like, you know, 40 dudes running at you and you want to try and find a way to get out, so jumping off the edge can be good. You got that, you can at least attempt to jump onto somewhere with solid ground and get away. It works, and even just for keeping up with Zergs and so on, or if you're in something more organized, just to be able to keep moving and not have to, you don't really want people having to revive you in World v World. You're a sitting duck basically, and it can get, now that I've moved to the Blackgate server, man, it can get competitive, so it's awesome. Alright, so that is everything about the traits. Hopefully I didn't waffle on too much there. So we'll just talk about, actually quickly, because it'll work in together. I did mention before about the 7 slot, and basically the changes that I would make there. So as I said before, I'll just quickly run through them. If I'm using the consecrations, which is most of the time, the main one I'll use is Wall of Reflection, so it reflects projectiles back to the enemies. If you're fighting Dredge or that Spider in AC, that is a rather beautiful skill for helping the group, keeping it going. Purging Flames I mentioned before, so if you're in a tighter situation where your allies are going to be quite close, or you just need it for a bit of, it's a nice little DPS and condition removal combination. Hallowed Ground, so sometimes you might fight a boss that does a ton of knockdowns, and when you knock down, it's you're not hitting, obviously, so you want to be able to keep that going. That is really nice, the Hallowed Ground. It also improves the burn duration for everyone within it by 20%, which is really, really cool. The only other one that I tend to use often is Sanctuary. I use that, I don't use it a lot, but say it's a situation like, I guess some of it, I probably use it more in like world boss fights, particularly something like Jormag, where you're all stacked together and you get these like icicles that, there's about 6 of them I think from memory, and they all sort of hold in the air and then pincer down onto everyone. It can be a nice way to deflect some of that, just deflect some of the general, or maybe not deflect, but alleviate some of the constant damage you can just get by being within a certain range of that icicle wall that's there. So that can be a nice, nice little bonus for everyone. Gives a bit of a constant heal out of it as it pulses as well. So yeah, that one can be quite good. The other one is, if I want to go more shouts like we're talking about with World v World, I'll generally go with, there it is, Stand Your Ground. Occasionally go with Retreat, just depends on the situations, because you get a massive swiftness boost there. The Aegis, which is a block then, that's good, but I don't know, this one can be a bit more useful, I find, in general, and it's a stun break for you, so that's pretty cool. The only other one I use on occasions, probably more when it's solo type thing, situations for myself, would be the this one here, the Smite Condition. Cures conditions, does damage if it actually did successfully remove a condition. That can be pretty good. Don't use it a great deal. I don't trait for it because the cooldown's pretty low at 20. But yeah, that'd be the only variations there. The elite skill, I guess I should just talk about before I move on to the other parts while we're talking about skills. Probably the most common one I use would be the Tome of Courage, which gives you support skills. I guess particularly if I'm in a pug situation, it's a nice little safety net because you don't know what just from the outset, you don't know what the other members have equipped or how tough they are and stuff like that. So it's a nice little safety. If then you work out the group is doing pretty well, then I may switch to the Tome of Wrath so I can help with a bit of DPSing. Because obviously when you switch into either of these, your virtues switch off basically, so the effects aren't passed on anymore. So you'd only really want to switch to that. Like, you can keep on healing with this one, which, you know, means you don't lose too much from, say, particularly Virtual Resolve. And if your group's not doing well and you switch to power, you know, you're at the risk of everyone dying and you're the only one standing, potentially. So if everyone's doing alright, that's a pretty good way to go. The only other thing, I mean, Renewed Focus, I used to use it a lot, but the tomes I find are a bit more useful most of the time. If you play a build like this, and I'll put some footage on at some point of me and some fractals and so on, you'll see my health doesn't move that much. It's pretty rare to get into like a massive amount of trouble, unless I'm maybe not concentrating. I've got a lot of toughness, so I mean that's going to deflect a lot of things, and then you've got, well, protection on quite a lot of the time, to be honest, which alleviates that further. So yeah, I don't find it overly useful. Some of these I use at times, like the racial ones. Warband support's not too bad. That can be kind of good if you've got a bit of a cluster, just so you can offer some AoE. I'd say the Mistwolf is pretty good because you get a bit of they do some direct damage as well as AoE and what do you call it? Putting the chill effect, which is kind of cool, and it's got a low cooldown. It's pretty good, but that's not something that everyone has access to. So I'd say your tomes are probably your best bet, but depends how you play. Depends how comfortable you feel with those. It takes a little bit of getting used to. You could go for that for like ultimate, like personal safety, I guess. So yeah, let's have a look at the weapons. Okay, so, alright, so basically, as I said before, staff is quite a mainstay for myself. I'll just go through an overview and then we'll break it down. Shield, I tend to use quite a bit. I find it's probably the more useful because of what we said with the traits before and offering an additional heal there. Okay, and then we've got the mace. And, okay, so I use, for all my weapons, I use soldier stats. Basically, this is a build, I guess, as I developed it over time. And there was times, I mean, especially when I first started playing, wasn't in a guild, so you tend to pug a lot. And, I don't know, I started to tweak this build so, you know, it could be able to do a decent amount of damage. As well, I mean, it's not massive damage, but it contributes, and be able to offer that really good support. So it's a bit of a balanced build, I guess, overall. And again, that's why I guess I said before that you can take it anywhere. So soldier, so you get that bit of power, and obviously you get the toughness, vitality, which helps in all those different ways we mentioned earlier. The way it interlocks with the nourishments and the way it's just going to help to, you know, keep you up that bit more if you manage everything else well. So, okay, bit of a bit of a combo thing going on with the armor. So okay, I tend to use cleric for the head, cleric for the shoulders. Main reason for that is, as I was mentioning earlier about the virtual resolve, it basically comes down to, from experience that I've had, that seems to get you to a healing power that's just enough to keep up most classes in most different types of builds that they're likely to run. Just enough. It's just ideally you'd want to get to 600, and you can rather than the 555 we saw earlier. But once you get your ascended gear going, and if you put some healing infusions in, that's going to get you the rest of the way basically. But it hits like for me it's like a bit of a sweet spot for that healing. So okay, so this is all exotic gear at the moment. Haven't got my ascended gear. Yeah, I've got the bits. I just need a few more bits of dragonite and so on. So okay, the rest of my gear is soldiers. Again, just to it boosts a bit of power and keeps that toughness and vitality up. So all that synergy and so on, as we said before. As I mentioned earlier, using the trooper runes just to give us further toughness and vitality, and give condition removal off every shout that we use, which is, yeah, it's beautiful. An extra condition removal for not really doing anything other than having a rune. And the really cool thing, these runes, I think they're starting to get a little bit more popular, but generally they're not that expensive, especially compared to some out there. Probably the most expensive part of this is getting soldier gear. It can be expensive because it's not something you can just straight out craft. Yeah, so that's that setup. I do then, if we shift over to the accessories, trinkets I should say, I go all cleric with those ones, including the gems that are in there as well. I do have one of my, I've got an ascendant amulet so far. You saw before, I do have the 2 legendaries here, so I've got a bit of agony resistance on there. Haven't got the back piece I want yet. I'm very close to having the Shadow of Grenth, where you can choose the stats, and I'm going to obviously be choosing the cleric, as I said before. That just gives us that extra boost. That's why this power is a bit lower, healing power at the moment, because we've got bugger all basically on there, and condition damage, which I don't find is all that useful for this build. So okay, then we've got, again, just for the breather, if you can get one, soldier again. Haven't found anything exotic that I can get. Don't think you can get anything at this stage. Pop a trooper rune on there, so it just synergizes with the rest of your armor when you're in the underwater. And again, soldier. The sigils. Yeah, I should just sort of mention again, just to boost a bit of the damage that we can do while supporting. Power from Bloodlust, and then we've got, if we look at this one, so I use the Sigil of Force just to get that bit more, and particularly because with that trait before, I don't use the one very often that gives me the boost for boons, and that's dependent on how many boons you have at a time to how much that's going to scale. So versus this, it's a flat out all the time 5%, which is quite nice. So like I said, it just gives me that little boost, even in situations where say the whole team has gone down or very close to going down, and they're not able to do so much DPS. I've got the survivability. If I can get in there and at least knock them down at a reasonable rate, or give them long enough to excuse me, draw the enemy away so they can maybe get up from a down state while I can keep the attention, that's a pretty good way to run it as well. So I do carry the other weapons with me, just so I've got them. I use hammer sometimes when I'm roaming around. It's just a nice fun weapon to mess around with. I prefer it over the greatsword, which is a bit different to most people. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just because I like it, to be honest with you. Everything else is pretty much the same, except for that one. I do sometimes... I do have a set of Knight's gear that I sometimes run just for a bit of extra damage in roaming. But yeah, it's not so constant. Just trying to think what else. Yeah, that more or less covers those ones off. So I mean, as you can see there with the stats, we end up with, this is again just only an exotic gear, except for the couple of parts here. So we're around about the 1800 mark. Once you get your bloodlust up, and if we're looking at a full ascended set, you're pushing just under 2000, like about 1980 from memory, power, which is quite respectable. Then we have a look over here. So our virtue recharge 20%, that comes from the traits. That's pretty handy. Just makes these a little bit shorter, which is not a bad thing at all. Armor, so we're sitting at the 3100 mark. Again, if you get to the full ascended stage, you'll be pushing more to the 3250. Your health isn't going to go up too much with the ascended gear. Maybe about 300, although it's kind of odd when you use things like GW2.net. In there it tells you that you would be around, say, what was it, say about 18,700, but in game for some reason you're actually sitting at just over 19,000. So I'm not sure how that works there, but yeah, if you guys get a chance to do it, you'll see it, and yeah, maybe it's a bug or whatever. Critical chance we don't worry about. Again, precision related, don't worry about it too much. Critical damage, we're getting that out of the toughness, out of the Valor tree. If you hit one, I guess you're going to do a bit more damage, that's cool. Healing power, so in this, mainly because I don't have this piece correct here, we're sitting a bit lower than I'd like. Once you get full ascended, you're going to be, depending on which infusions you put in, you should be at almost exactly the 1200 mark for healing power, which is that sweet spot for me. Then we've got here the 20% burn duration, which we get from the bottom tree there, the virtues. You get that as well as the virtue recharge. You know, because there's going to be so many burns going on, it's not bad, it's pretty cool. But the most important thing here is the skills that we're using. So just thinking, I think I've covered most things there. As I said before, it's a build you can take just about anywhere. Most of the choices that I've made that are a bit different to some, like there's a bit of a stigma about healing power from most people in the game, but yeah, they wonder why I put healing infusions in things like this. But I find, from experience and keeping all different types of groups up, I've just found a sweet spot that I like, that has been successful. And I'll have some videos of that now that I'm in quite a big guild at the moment. It's only just happened recently, that do lots of fractal runs and things like that on a high scale. So you'll be able to see all those things in action. Yeah, so that's kind of the summary. This is the first build video, so hopefully I didn't waffle on with some things too much and got everything pretty clear. Any questions you guys have, please leave them below and I'll do my best to answer them. Maybe even see you guys in game, be able to help you out a little bit. I mentioned previously, if anyone wants to know like a cheap way to try out a build like this, we can look at working that out. Like I said, the only thing that's going to really be all that expensive is your soldier armor. I just found that it's not very expensive. There's definitely things like berserker gear is more expensive than that generally, but it just, I guess, yeah, it can be a bit more of a cost compared to some things. The rest of it, if you're not with legendaries, is obviously going to be a lot cheaper. Yeah, so that's about where we're at there. So I'm going to wrap that one up. Again, like as I said, any questions on that, come to me with those, and I'll help you guys out with any and all knowledge that I've got, if there's anything I missed out. And next one, I'm leveling my new Necro up at the moment, so hopefully it won't be too far away. And then we'll have a build for that one and have some more footage of, as I said, because of that guild, lots of World v World, lots of fractals with those builds, and I'll show you guys some variations of builds as well, so you can see, you know, how they work everywhere without having to go into all the cost of it, which is always quite nice. So Alrighty, thanks guys, appreciate the time. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you again soon for another one.